There we are. We're flinging open the doors to the webinar, and I see people joining us. So hello, everybody, as you're coming in and joining us for what's going to be another great conversation. Rachel, thank you so much again for doing
it. You're so welcome. It's fun to be back. It's my virtual home away from home.
It really is. I think we need to have like a little, like a Rachel, like I have my Warwick's banner, we'll have a Rachel banner over my other shoulder over here. So Eliza, it's great to have you back.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Denny, welcome for the first time.
I'm thrilled to be here.
Yay. Yeah. So Denny, let's start with you. Where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from Savannah, Georgia, where it's 70-some degrees. The sun was shining. The sky was...
What a beautiful city that is.
It's sort of cute. I'm not
sort
mad
of cute. Yeah. Not a bad place to be.
Yeah.
And Eliza, where are you calling in from tonight?
I am calling in from Maryland. It is not beautiful and 70 degrees. It is rainy and foggy and cold. And I'm bringing energy that like I had to summon from within, because those kinds of days like make me very sleepy.
I know. You just want to curl up with a good book like
yes.
you have.
Yeah, for sure.
And Rachel, we know you are Europe, but just let everybody know here.
I am in Toronto, Canada, and I don't speak American temperatures, even though people keep trying to teach me. But I would say it's balmy and warm. We have had the most spring-like winter ever, which is kind of sad for me because winter is my favorite season. But I've been in New Orleans in July when it was hotter back here in Toronto. So I think a lot of people don't realize that Canada isn't all a frozen wasteland.
Tundra. Yeah, that's not a frozen tundra.
I used to come to the Caribbean Festival in Toronto.
Oh, isn't it fantastic?
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So I came for about 3 years straight. It was super fun.
Oh, it's a neat city. Yeah.
And everybody, I just realized I forgot to, I just turned on the chat for everybody. So if anybody wants to let us chime in and let us know where you're watching from today, we always love to see that. Let you know where Warwick's is for those of you that aren't familiar with us. We are located in La Jolla, San Diego, California. So we're actually having a little bit of weather here today for us. We've been having more rain than usual. So usually it's about 70 and beautiful, but today it's probably in the low 60s and we're going to have a little rain pretty soon. So we got British Columbia coming in. So love that.
And you have so many good events right now. Oh my goodness.
Me?
Well, the store,
the store is crazy right now.
Online and in person.
Online and in person. Check out our calendar if you don't. If you're in the San Diego area, we would love for you to come to our events. We do have a pretty good events program. So let's get on with the show here. Just real quick, couple housekeeping things. I'm going to put into the chat how to order. Who's got a copy of the book to hold up? Can't we be friends?
Oh, mine is backward.
It looks good for us. It's on camera. It's right. So can't we be friends? So that will be in the chat for you to be able to order. We could ship it anywhere in the US. Sorry, Canada, we can't get it up there, but you have good indie bookstores up there.
Oh, we've got our own bookstores where I've seen it on shelves.
You guys, and if you're in the San Diego area, we'd love for you to come to the store and pick it up there. Rachel is going to chat with Eliza and Denny for about 35-ish minutes. There's a Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you have a question for any of the ladies on the screen, pop it in there. I'll come back and bring those questions to them. So without further ado, let me just quickly introduce, I have to do my due diligence. I'm sure most everybody knows who all you ladies are, but the official. Denny S. Bryce is an award-winning and best-selling author of historical fiction, including Wild Women and the Blues, which I believe there's a copy of it back there. You could see a picture of it back there. She is also an adjunct professor in the MFA program at Drexel University, a book critic for NPR, and a member of the Historical Novel Society, Women's Fiction Writers Association, and Tall Poppy Writers. And as she said, she lives in Savannah, Georgia. And welcoming back Eliza Knight is an award-winning and USA Today and international best-selling author of historical women's fiction. Her love of history began as a young girl when she traipsed the halls of Versailles. Love that. As an avid history buff, she's written dozens of novels, including The Mayfair Bookshop, starring Adela Stair, Ribbons of Scarlet, and A Day of Fire. She is the creator of the popular historical blog History Undressed and the host of the History Books and Wine podcast. And like we said, they're here to chat about Can't We Be Friends, a novel of Ella Fitzgerald and Marilyn Monroe. And joining them is our favorite Rachel McMillan. Rachel's the author of several books with several on the horizon that I'll ask her about later. And she's one of the busiest, most generous women in this business. And we just adore your interviews. So thank you, Rachel. And you ladies all have a great conversation. And we'll see you in a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, this is so fun. First, ladies, I want to say congrats on being featured on the Today Show, because that happened on release day, which was yesterday. And
Yes.
that must have been just so cool because that's such amazing exposure for your new beautiful release here. Yeah, congrats on that
And
because
also, I want to shout out in return to Kennedy Ryan, because that's her call to pick those books, and so appreciative that it all happened coincidentally on our release day. So
oh, that's fantastic that
It
it just
really-
aligns like that. And then it's an author's dream.
yeah.
Well, I have done some work for the Tall Poppies in the past, so I have seen you both. And Eliza, I believe we did a little chat for my Facebook page when you did Mayfair Bookshop, which was a huge bestseller in Canada. It was so fun to be approached to talk to you both about this amazing book. About two incredible women. And I think readers, you should know that, yes, this book delves into their iconic status as legends, but it also delves into their humanity as normal women who have the same fears and triumphs and bad relationships and good relationships as the rest of us. So you're going to be introduced to Marilyn and to Ella Fitzgerald in a brand new way, which I really appreciated. I have been interviewing a lot of author pairs recently. Kate Quinn and Janie Chang were just in Toronto last week. So I just did the whole roundtable with them about writing together. And people enjoy knowing the meet cute story of, I believe it involves Eliza and her kitchen and sandwiches and kind of this stream of consciousness that led to this. But listen, you're part of Tall Poppy Writers. You're part of the Historical Novel Society. You're obviously rooted, both of you, in community. But how did you break out into this little pair to write about these two amazing women?
I think sometimes we say it started in 2019 at her kitchen table in her new house at the time that I remember had boxes. I'm gonna squeal on you right now.
Wow.
But
Still has boxes.
but frankly, it began before then. It just Eliza and I have known each other over 10, maybe 12 years. We were members of a group called Maryland Romance Writers, a chapter. I don't know if they're still affiliated with RWA or not. No.
They're unaffiliated.
Yeah. So we met way back then and lived near each other and just, saw each other all the time, hung out, loved to go to Baltimore for that summer festival.
That's a gorgeous city too.
Oh, it was just a lot of fun. So we were just always hanging out, and every now and then we'd have a glass of wine.
A thimbleful, a tiny little sip.
A little sip. So we've been around each other for a few years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what I enjoyed most about this book is that you explored the legacy of these women beyond their recognizable talents and how we associate them. Because often we appropriate people for our own experiences, especially when they inform a medium that we identify with. So many women find strength in Marilyn Monroe because she was so open with her sensuality, because she seems so larger than life. In the same way, a lot of people identify with Ella Fitzgerald because she sings words that we identify with and songs that perhaps help us through valleys and meadows and high places. as an emotional point of resonance. But you dive more deeply into these women beyond what they were known for. So Marilyn Monroe especially is often viewed through the lens of her relationships with men, with Joe DiMaggio, with Arthur Miller, with the men who wanted to own and commodify her because she was a pinup girl. And yet this book more than passes the Bechdel test in that there are women talking with each other about something other than men. You bring it in us into the sphere of women as a whole, often while examining, you know, her heartbreaks and her disappointing relationship with the world of men, with men she loved, men she hated. How, Eliza, did you find that balance, and how integral was it for you to explore a more feminist experience for the reader? Because this is a very feminist book, even though it looks at women who are perhaps not always viewed at through that lens.
Yeah, so when we originally came up with the concept for the novel and wanting to focus on their friendship, we also knew that Marilyn's story has been told over and over again, a million different ways, in a certain way, which does focus on her sexuality and her, pinupness and her relationships with famous men. And we really wanted to come from a much more personal side and show who she was beyond Marilyn Monroe, which was really sort of like a cover for herself. Like she put on a show when she went out in public as Marilyn Monroe. And so that was our major focus, was that we wanted it to be a much more intimate portrait of who she was and how she was with a friend, which is why we have that like intimate relationship with her and Ella. And besides the fact that we really wanted to explore the relationship between her and Ella, which was not talked about back then and hardly talked about now. I'll let Denny jump in here to talk about that. We had a lot of trouble with that, finding some information.
Yes, yes. Well, thinking about, right now in Hollywood or in celebritydom, everything is out there. Social media covers everything. Back in the day, in the 1950s, it was Walter Winchell, Jet Magazine, and the fact society was not ready to talk about a Black woman and a white woman being friends who were of the stature of these two women in the 50s. So there wasn't a lot of front page news stories or magazine articles about them hanging out. So our digging really, the first thing that gave us joy that we found was a contract that they had put together for a Friends album they wanted to do together.
Oh, how great.
That blew our minds when we found that, because it was a key sign that these two women, there were other things, but that was one of the first things we really put our hands on and said, wow, that's cool. We're on the right track.
There was definitely some like squealing when we found like, wait, are you reading this right? Am I reading this right?
What, this happened? Oh my gosh. And that's, readers, that's what's going to fascinate you about this book in particular, because if you have even a working knowledge about Ella and Marilyn, or anything that you've consumed in media or the films about them or hearing about them, this is quite different because it takes a very different perspective. And both Marilyn and Ella, to some degree, although a very different degree, were confined by the prejudices of their time. Ella, of course, being a Black woman, and Marilyn written off by her perceived role as just a sex pot, and the ownership of both of these labels, that you were allowed to be in one box or another. But it seemed that they had limited agency in so many ways, given the way that people perceived them. And you just talked about this. No one talked about them being in the same sentence because they were from two different portions of what society deemed was acceptable. And yet you not only conflate them, but you talk about how you find the artist's focus beyond the constriction of the world's viewpoint. And it's so neat how you do that. So what was one way that you found, Denny, that you were able to tap into Ella and think, this woman is so much more than perhaps a record I heard or a hit single or the voice we all can hear in our head, even though she's not singing to us. We all know what Ella Fitzgerald sounds like. How did you tap into Ella to get that resonance?
Well, one of the things we did was to first get into the women of the time. Having a clear understanding of the 1950s and the role of women, Black women or white women, during a time period that was post-World War II. The world had changed dramatically from a point where women were actively involved in work, in the workplace, and doing all of these things, to being pulled away from that and being minimalized in society. So we had that worldview of how people were looking at women during that time period. Then I dove deeply into her albums, but her live albums. Her live albums are when she has banter, when she
that Mac the Knife, where she forgets the lyrics. It's so good.
And it's so fabulous. But she'll sit back and there was one I recall very clearly where she's someplace in Chicago, probably. And one of the audience members asked her a question about a request. And she was like, that album has been out 2 years. If you wanted to hear it, you should have bought it 2 years ago.
Good for her.
She was just frustrated with being asked to sing the same songs over and over again. But that gave me a strong hint as to the depth of her personality and her determination. Her stage presence was amazing. And the other thing that we noticed about Marilyn and Ella, a shared thing that they did, was they spoke in a whisper. Both of them had a whispery voice. And I remember one of my bosses saying, because, if a woman raises her voice, she sounds upset or hysterical. Right. If you're wanting to make a point, lower your volume. And I was like, but they used it in the 50s a little differently. They wanted people not to know them.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool, especially because we know Marilyn for that breathy voice, but Ella, when she sings, is all power. She is a blast. She could rein it in. That's so cool. And what about you, Eliza? I mean, gosh, Marilyn was so multifaceted and quite an intelligent and well-read woman. How did you find and I'm going to ask a bit later, because readers, you should know that Ella's point of view, POV, as we say in the writing world, is written in first person, and Marilyn's in this book is written in third person. How did you tap into getting to Marilyn Monroe? I mean, it must have been a little bit intimidating.
So it was extremely intimidating. And the amount of material for Marilyn versus Ella, who there's biographies and things like that, but nothing from her own story. And she was also so private. But Marilyn was out there, there's tons of biographies and everyone's written a memoir about how they met her. And, the one instance that she made a difference in their life, or sometimes the lies they're telling, and they're lying about whatever instance it was that they had with her, like the affair that some guy claims that he had with her for like a week. It's like, my week with Marilyn. No, you didn't.
Maybe a movie.
Oh, there was a movie. It's not a very good movie.
I don't believe it. But so one of the things that I did was she had a journal, and lots of journals, and some of the things from her journals were published. So I was able to read some of the things that she wrote herself. And then there's also like it's an autobiography that she apparently interviewed with this guy to share. And I have it somewhere back here, but it's a lot from her own voice, like her story. And it's a lot of stuff from like her childhood. So like we're diving into things that were like prior to her being famous, which was what really interested me because that's that's like her core person, right?
The Norma Jean years.
Right, the Norma Jean. And she created this whole Marilyn Monroe persona, and it was an act. And in fact, you know, the breathy voice that she used on stage when she would do some of her interviews or some of like the candid things you could hear, specifically on YouTube, actually, you hear her actual voice kind of break through sometimes, which is still soft, but it's not the sexy voice. And then the other really sad thing that I did was obviously I was watching all of her movies to get an idea of her style and how her style changed as she was studying, because she was very much a perfectionist and, you know, always studying her craft, including going to joining classes at the artist actress. Oh my God, my brain is like.
Oh, you guys have been doing a lot. It's quite okay.
So she did a lot of classes there because she just was really into being a perfectionist. So I wanted to see how her acting changed from when she was like a minor actress becoming a big film star, and then also to see the downfall, which is actually very telling. If you watch The Misfits, it's when she was at the height of her emotional issues with her husband. She was having a lot of issues with using pills and alcohol. She was having a lot of issues with friends at that point, a lot of paranoia and depression, and you can see the difference in her acting. But I think it's also because Arthur Miller, when he created that particular screenplay for that movie, the script, it's taking so much of her real life and he put it on screen, which is, I think, just awful. And I can't imagine for her being as emotionally fragile as she was to then have to relive these horrible things in her past that she probably did not want to relive, and she's having to do it in front of a lot of people and be authentic about it. So she's feeling those things because she was also a method actor, which means that she feels everything she's doing on stage. And so I think that was horrible, but you can see it in the movie, just the difference in her acting, and it's just very sad. So that was a lot of deep studying of her in, you know, nonfiction, her own words, interviews on that we were able to watch on, you know, documentaries and YouTube and things like that, and then watching and studying the movies.
So it's almost as if she trained to be able to portray her own tragedy when she started to, you know, she's a fascinating person. And at the heart of Marilyn and Ella's, both of them, it's not only a poignant bond between them, but a portrait of artistry. And I feel that not with Ella, I think everyone can basically say at this point that Ella was a musical genius and a foremother of jazz as we know it, and improvisation and scat. Yes, but Marilyn still gets written off. And indeed, both women's true talent is perhaps, we're getting there with Marilyn, more fully realized in retrospect. While they were living, perhaps we didn't appreciate them as much as we do now, especially in terms of nuance and intelligence. And, you know, we've got the jazz canon, we've got Marilyn's incredible. One thing about Marilyn is, yes, she often played an interesting part in films, but she was often paired with some of the leading actors of the time, and Ella could hold her own against anybody.
Sang with all of those great
with
crooners.
All of it. Beyond
yeah.
the great crooners, they could never improvise the way that she could.
No.
How
there were a couple up there.
Where do we need to go? Mel Torme, yes.
Yes, I'll always throw him in the mix.
We've got the social perception. We've got the constraints of women in history because it's largely written and perceived by men and tabloids in the case of these women. Yeah. How far do we need to go? Where do we need to go next, Denny, in our appreciation of Ella Fitzgerald? Where would you point us as readers?
Oh my goodness. Actually, as readers, there's a new biography out
Ooh.
That just came out. I don't have it nearby because otherwise I would say the name and title and all that good stuff. But it came out in December, and they were
Julie, can you Google this and put it in the link for us?
yeah, it's a nonfiction, but I haven't had a chance to read it. But the fact that it is focused on Ella, I think that is really important. And because everything that I found while I was doing my research was about her music, and very little touched upon her
Right.
personal life, since she did not talk about it publicly. What I found that was, but to your question, what is important to recognize about a talent, about a woman who had as much depth? She loved children. She had to this day, there's a fabulous foundation that is out of somewhere out of LA, I believe, that is very supportive of young people in schools and orphans. She had that background. Her commitment to wanting to be the best, I think, is one of the key elements, aspects of her character. She was the hardest working woman in jazz. She performed everywhere. She recorded all the time. She wanted to be in front of the audience. She wanted to be on stage. She wanted to have a family and have a home life. She wanted the entire package. But back in the day, back during that time period, that package was not available for women. Especially women in the arts, in the entertainment industry. I was talking last night to a group and I said, imagine Beyonce in 1955. What would she and her performances look like back then? What role would her husband play? And who would we really know more about today? Her or her husband?
And
or so
it's amazing you bring that up, because on Twitter, where I get all my world news as a boring Canadian, is that I first heard Beyonce's country song. It's like,
yeah,
oh my gosh, is there nothing this woman can't do? Like, she's amazing at everything. She's a goddess. And then I saw
she
people
was raised
giving
on country music. She was raised
she's
on it.
and gospel and just, but
Yeah.
there's even backlash against that. She should not be in this world. She should not be doing this. And there are so many, hurdles that both of the women in this story come up against. And honestly, Eliza, most readers will have a rudimentary knowledge of Marilyn Monroe, even if it's just that picture from 7 Year Itch, which I recently rewatched, and gosh, there's not Marilyn's fault, but there's a lot to unpack about that film.
The fact that she doesn't even have a name.
She's the girl.
The girl.
She's there to play chopsticks and eat potato chips, and that film has a lot wrong with it. But what is one thing that you wish we could know about Marilyn that we don't from our conception of her?
I guess the thing that I would want people to know about her is something I sort of touched on already, and you did as well. And that's just that she was extremely intelligent. She was always studying, not just her craft, but she was a huge reader. When she passed away, she had a massive library. And I mean, we're talking classics like Ulysses, hard books that I don't want to read. She was devouring. She read a lot of nonfiction politics books. She studied religions. And she also attended briefly some classes at UCLA. She was always trying to learn and better herself and perfect her craft, but also just grow as a person, I think. And I don't think a lot of people realize that she was had that much depth. They think of her as sort of this flaky, blonde, sexy bombshell with no brain. And that's completely opposite. She was very happy to be a quote unquote normal person and learn stuff and have friends and chat with people about things that were beyond, men and, being a film star and sexy and all of that.
And both of them, you know, you talk about how both of them were kind of shy when they were, and perhaps that's part of the intersection between the two of them, is that they don't always fulfill this role. And one way you can see that Marilyn is intelligent, you can see Ella's intelligence through her improvisational ability. When you've got an entire orchestra waiting on you, and the fact that you can just go with it, it's amazing. With Marilyn, you can tell because of the comic timing of the other people around you watching it. Like, and the other people around her, if you watch Some Like It Hot, Tony Curtis would fall flat in the sand in that scene if it weren't for Marilyn Monroe. She drives so much of it. She was so intelligent.
Yeah.
Where did your research take you, both physically and in book form? Did you travel to any places that were frequented by Ella and Marilyn? You know, we've got YouTube at our disposal. Thank heavens for the internet as historical writers. Oh my gosh. You've got YouTube, you've got films. Did you go to any places that these two women frequented? Or
I'm a jazz fan, so I've been to the nightclubs in Chicago.
And you can tell in this book that Denny's a jazz fan, and from Wild Women in the Blues, which you also have to buy it when you buy this and then just do them as a counterpart study.
Go back to back. Yeah, I'm a music fan, but jazz is one of my faves. There's a hotel in Los Angeles that's in my second book, called, at the time was called the Hotel Somerville, but then later it was called the Dunbar Hotel. And I've been to that hotel, right? But I was there in 2016, but it was a senior living center, no longer a hotel, but it still had the thing in the concrete in front of the door that said Hotel Somerville. So I've been to this space, and that's one of the spots she stayed in. It was the only hotel in Los Angeles when it opened in 1928 that was a luxury hotel for African Americans only. Otherwise, the African American community didn't have any place to stay. That was, you know, Count Basie and the stars of Hollywood.
The whole Green Book, but not that film because it was terrible.
Yeah, no, not that film. No, that was wrong.
Not that one.
Yes, you see. Okay, we won't go down that rabbit hole.
But yes, the limitation of spaces.
Yeah. So that's one place I've been. Several of the nightclubs in there. I've even been to a jazz club in London, but I don't think it's in the book. But that's
I love that. You follow this medium around the world. And it sparks alive. And Eliza, did you follow Marilyn's path at all?
Yeah, so I've been to New York a million times, and and on the Brooklyn Bridge and all of that. So I didn't go there specifically for this novel. I've just been there a bunch. But I did go to LA to tour a movie studio and put her hands in the cement outside of the theater. We drove past her house, which the fence was so high I couldn't actually see the house, and I didn't want to be like a stalker. So I didn't climb out of my car, but and I went to her grave. And then also I have also been to London as well, and been near where she stayed, near Windsor Park. So I think we both did we took a lot from our own experiences and we've done for other books and for personal reasons. And then we've also, put the time in for the novel as well.
And I just think that makes it more authentic and organic because you already have an attachment to certain things. And everyone, it's 7:34, well, 4:34 where Warwick's is. And I have 5 more pages of questions. However, Eliza and Denny, go big or go home, just in case.
Right.
They are doing so many events, and I know both of these women. If you have a question that I didn't ask or need to talk later after this, would be happy to answer them. But the final question I have before we open it up to readers is this. I was fascinated by the fact that you had one viewpoint in third person and one viewpoint in first person, and that's the author in me talking. Was that a conscious decision in the outlining phase, or was that something that just I'm saying organically again because I can't think of another word, that just magically happened in the preparation for this story.
So
It
was
did not magically happen.
You never know.
It was a very conscious decision. We
Love it.
talked about tense and you know, first person, second person, third second person. Yeah, we talked about it.
You love
third person. Yeah, I'm crazy when we would play with second person. But we wanted to communicate. Everyone, how can I say this? The tragedy of Marilyn's death is known. To put her in first person didn't feel quite right. In addition, we wanted the story perspective to be from Ella's viewpoint, and putting her in first person present tense had her experience in the moment, and putting Marilyn in third person, was it first tense or past tense? I can't remember anything anymore. What was it?
It's first person present.
Okay.
It's just so, and it's so inimitable and alive, both of the perspectives. And I want to end with the very final page of the book is from Ms. Magazine, which I actually read far too much into because I was like, wow, this is showing how far we've come from the 50s, when women are commodified, where they're Miss and they can't even own a bank account and they can't even have a house without their husband's signature, to a time where we're slowly, well, not so much nowadays in certain areas, but where we're starting to talk more about a woman being a Ms. And Ella Fitzgerald is quoted as saying, but we can absolutely attribute this to both of these women who are so exceptional, an unusual woman, a little ahead of her times. And I just think that that is such a poignant and magnificent closing, because there's the detriment of the little ahead of her times. We're still staying in our lane. We can't say too much. We can't be too brash. And yet 1970s and Ms. Magazine, you're still kind of playing it coy, but both of these women were massively ahead of their time and their male counterparts, just in so many different ways. So I'll pass it back to Julie. This book is you will read this. It's just wonderful vignettes. And I should say finally, because I wanted to point this out, if you're a Marilyn or an Ella Fitzgerald fan for one hallmark or highlight of their career, you're going to see that here. It's so exceptionally outlined. And the dates as we go through their lives together, it points out all that awesome stuff. But in the meantime, you're going to read and learn a lot more beyond that. So go buy this shiny book, everybody. Back to you, Julie.
Back to me. Oh my God, it's another great interview. And excuse me if you've already covered this, because I was caught up on some tech stuff in the background.
Oh, no worries.
But can you imagine, and I hope you didn't cover this, because can you imagine both Ella and Marilyn and what they would have to navigate if they were alive today with social media? And how different.
We talked a little
bit
about
that.
Beyonce, yeah. And I was thinking today, because one of Canada's national papers had a picture, one of our national serious media outlets, the front page was a picture of Sydney Sweeney from her Saturday Night Live hosting gig, where she is dressed in a dress that accentuates all of her assets. And I saw that today on the front cover. I was like, okay, well, we're still doing this. This is the front page, everything going on in the world, and we're focusing on this. Yeah. I just think that,
but I wonder
I
just wonder how they would have been different. You know what I mean? How they would they have been the icons that they are?
Oh, absolutely.
So much.
They knew how to play it. They definitely knew how to play it. Even they were savvy.
Absolutely savvy. But also, if one of the things that Ella wanted desperately but never had an opportunity to do was Broadway, as well as television.
Wow.
And because of her size, that was something that was not available to her. And right now, she'd be on stage. She'd be any place she wanted to be.
Yeah, you're right.
The thing that Marilyn wanted was to continue to grow as a performer, as an actress, and diversify. I mean, her comic timing, one of my favorite films, and she only has a small part in it, is called All About Eve.
Oh, she's so good in that.
So good in that. Her timing is amazing throughout that. And it's, you know, examples of that timing. You mentioned Some Like It Hot, but also there's another movie, the one where she's the singer, Bus Stop.
Yes.
Bus Stop is,
that one's underrated. People should go watch that one.
So underrated. Anyway, now my old movies.
Oh, I'm such a fan. And
Niagara,
she had such a range. And you could tell she was laughing at those men in her head.
Everything.
Right.
You know.
All right. So the question that you saved for me, Rachel. So Eliza and Denny first, are you two going to collaborate again on something?
Have no idea. The secrets, we keep secrets.
Secrets. I love it. Keep us on the edge of our seats. Okay, so that's good. So let's talk about what y'all have coming next. So we're going to start, Denny, with you, and then we'll go to Liza and Rachel. I want to hear what you got coming. So Denny, tell us what you got coming next, if you can.
I can, because I actually have
isn't it pretty?
A little poster there. The name of the book is called The Trial of Mrs. Rhinelander. It is historical fiction, except it's biographical historical fiction set in the 1920s about a young woman who married a wealthy real estate czar's son from New York City, except she was a domestic. So there's this big gap in their finances. But then there's another gap. A couple weeks after they were married, he sued her for divorce, or for not the divorce, there's a thing, but annulment, to annul the marriage, because she never mentioned that she was a Negro. And but it's it's even more complicated than that. So anyway, that was headline news throughout the nation. It's fun.
Love it. And for people who want to follow and know a little more about you, do you have a website you want to direct people to?
Absolutely. My handle and my website address are all the same wherever social media goes. It's Denny S. Bryce. That's it. DennySBryce. That's it.
Perfect. All right, Eliza, what do you got on the horizon for us?
So
the cutest cover ever.
Yes. The Queen's Faithful Companion comes out in June.
Ooh, that's soon.
Yeah. And Denny's is coming out a few weeks after mine in July, right?
Oh yeah, July 23rd.
Okay, so close.
We got a big year. So it's a novel of Queen Elizabeth and her beloved corgi, Susan. It's the corgi that her father gave her for her birthday when she turned 18. And the novel spans Susan's life, and it basically shows Elizabeth from the dog's point of view, but also from her own point of view in a more human light versus, like, you know, I mean, obviously I am very respectful of her as the former queen, but we get to see what that relationship is like between a person and their dog, and the dog and their favorite person. So it's like a love story between a pet and their human pet.
And I love it because, like, I was just going to say, it just humanizes her down. Yeah. It's like it takes her from this iconic thing.
Right.
And we all read Lessons in Chemistry. We can handle a dog viewpoint. We're there now. We're used to this.
All ready for it.
And then where would you like people to follow or go see you at?
So my website is elizaknight.com. I am on Instagram and Facebook as Eliza Knight Fiction. I'm also on TikTok, dabbling.
Oh, I like it. The dabble. I know the TikTok thing is like, that's a whole other social media world.
Yeah, it's like you have to be a film producer and like writer. We have to like come up with like all these ideas.
Yeah.
You have to have a
it's the
million hours
music,
a day. You have to have time.
right?
I don't know.
That's the big
And
thing.
Rachel, what are the many
Oh my
many
gosh,
things you're
it's
working
so
on?
many. Well, I'll be back here with you. I think next week we're doing
know,
Catherine
it's a-
DeRay, Berlin Letters, and Catherine and I have been friends for a million years since I got the advanced copy of her debut. But the Liberty Scarf that I've co-written with Janelle Sazelski and Amy Runyon is coming out in November with Harper Muse. And that is the story of three women in World War I who are bound together with a scarf from Liberty of London, which is a gorgeous kind of, if you're into Selfridges and that Harrods, Liberty of London is fantastic. So I've got that. We don't have a final date on Operation Scarlet, but that's coming again with HarperCollins. And that is my retelling of the Scarlet Pimpernel in 1940s France. So I've updated that story. It's needed a bit more edits, and with Liberty Scarf and everything else, it just hasn't found its perfect date. But you guys will be the first to know. And then in 2025, my next one after that is a biography of Sir Christopher Wren, the London architect. So I've got that going on. From UK publisher. There's lots, and I will be around lots interviewing people all year in person and online. That's there's a million interviews, which means
We
I
have
could
lots of
read a
interviews
million
just here at
books.
Warwick's with you. So
I know.
Stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
And then for following you, I love following you on Twitter, but where else would you like?
My
people to-
handle is Rach Kmick, RACHKMC everywhere on Instagram and Twitter. I always talk about the publishing industry. My day job is as a literary agent, and I always talk about what I'm reading. So I think those are the two best places to find me. I do have a website because we're made to, but I'm never there. So,
but
follow me
usually
on
that's a
social
good place.
media.
If people can't find you, they can go to the website and then see where.
Yeah, but I prefer
Super.
Twitter and X, I should say.
X, I know. I still call it Twitter, so it's like,
Yeah.
God help us. All right, ladies, this was fantastic. Congratulations, Denny and Eliza. Best of
Go
luck.
buy this book.
Go buy the book. Another great interview, Rachel. Thank you. So,
Oh, you're so
everybody,
welcome. Congratulations, ladies. I hope you have
Thank you.
amazing success with this.
you.
The research behind this is just astonishing, and everyone should value and engage with it because I can see firsthand that you put everything into this. So congratulations on an amazing book.
Thank you.
It's
so much.
terrific.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
All right,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye.